Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Nitai Gauranga Nitai Gauranga Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Hare
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shottatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivinoda Swami Prabhupada Ki Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shottatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Thakur Maharaj Ki Jai Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Shottatara Shishimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrindaki, Iskan founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki, Frames Kaho Shri Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari, Gaura Bhakta Vrindaki, Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath, Shama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki, Ganga Maya, Yamuna Maya Ki, Devi Tulsi Devi Ki, Shri Harinam Sankirtan Ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narsimhaya.
Namaste Narsimhaya.
Namaste Narsimhaya.
Namaste Narsimhaya. Kamalavare Nakama Buddha Shinga Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa Keshavadita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Keshavadita Narahari Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone who is out there joining us or for this Sunday afternoon. Those of you who are joining us on Zoom as well as the Philadelphia YouTube channel. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today is a day of celebration of the great Acharya, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Throughout the day, we've had two programs already, one in the morning during Bhagavatam class, and then also at noon, we had an observance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. And then this evening, we're happy to invite His Grace Anuttama Prabhu to speak about the life and teachings and mission of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. It's quite fitting that Anuttama Prabhu is with us. Anuttama, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur is the one who really kind of set the mission that later got fulfilled by our beloved Srila Prabhupada. And Anuttama Prabhu, he's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and he serves as our governing body commissioner here at ISKCON Philadelphia. And he's part of the governing body commission, which serves as the entity that keeps ISKCON consistent with Srila Prabhupada's teachings, with the founder for the other acharyas that came before, and is the visionaries for ISKCON. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur is a visionary, and we have with us His Grace Anuttama Prabhu. Anuttama Prabhu also serves as the minister for ISKCON communications, and in doing so, travels extensively throughout the world, providing guidance, performing seminars for devotees and guiding them on how to communicate not only internally within ISKCON, but also to the outside world, the message of Krishna consciousness. So, Anuttama Prabhu, are you here with us? I think I see you one here. Yep, you're here.
I'm there. I was muted, but I'm here.
You're here. Okay, so what we like to do just to start off, we like to give a quick darshan to you as well as all the devotees. So I'm going to take it off of me and on to His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki.
Jai Prabhupada.
And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki.
Jai.
And we have, excuse me, Prabhu, 1 second. We have the most merciful Lordship, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki.
Jai.
Jai.
So beautifully, the deities are dressed, the Sunday garlands, the Sunday outfit. Shri Shri Radha Sharad Bihari Ki.
Jai.
So darshan will be open today for those of you at home, starting at 5:45 to 7:15. After the lecture, if you'd like to come by the temple, you're more than welcome to. This time, Anuttama Prabhu, we'd like to hand things over to you. Again, we're very grateful for you taking the time to share with us this evening on this most auspicious day of the appearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Thank you, Dronacharya Prabhu. Thanks to all the devotees of Philadelphia for the opportunity to be with you. And we'll begin by chanting a song written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur that's known to most of us, so you can join in if you'd like. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Gopi Jana Balava Dinavadidari. Gopi Jana Balava Dinavadidari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yamuna Tiravanachari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Ki Jai. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So I want to start by thanking everyone again for the opportunity to be with you. Because of the COVID crisis, I haven't had a chance to visit Philadelphia in a long time. I am fortunate that at least weekly, Sukara Prabhu, he sends me beautiful photographs of the deities so I can have the Lordship's darshan. I think usually on a Sunday when he and his wife address the deities, so that allows me to still maintain some connection with Philadelphia. And of course, we have regular management meetings and board meetings and things like that, but I haven't been there to actually meet with the devotees or directly be in the room, direct darshan, other than this virtual darshan with the deities. So I'm glad to at least have a chance to share a little bit of time with you this evening, particularly to talk about this most auspicious day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's appearance day. Before I do, I'd just like to, just a brief reminder, message, encouragement to all the devotees. Please do everything that's necessary at this pandemic time to keep yourself and your family members well. We know that recently, very sadly, we lost the physical presence of His Holiness Bhakti True Swami. And today it was announced, and we hope that, certainly we pray that he'll recover, but it was announced that His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj is now ill, and he also has COVID. He had a high temperature. It's gone down. It actually seems like he's in a little better condition, but there was an official announcement that they are moving him to a hospital where they can monitor his situation. So before we begin, I'd actually like to pause. If you like, you can, I don't know if you can unmute everybody, and I'd like to 3 times have us all chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra together in prayer for His Holiness Gopal Krishna Maharaj and also other devotees. I have many friends around the world now that are sick from COVID-19 or from other things as well. So let's all chant together if we can and ask the Lord's special protection and blessings for these Vaishnavas.
So devotees will have to unmute themselves.
Yeah, you can unmute if you like. We can all chant together, or you can just listen. So let's try together. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Hare,
Hare,
Hare
Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare,
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
Krishna Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Hare Hare,
Krishna, Hare
Hare
Hare,
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama, Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Hare,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama, Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama.
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So the nature of Zoom is such that it's not possible to chant in unison, but we still chant in collectively. So that's a good thing. And we do pray to the Lord to protect his dearmost devotees all around the world. So a little bit about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Actually, he's such a great personality. I was asked to give this class maybe a couple weeks ago, and I kind of feel like I could have spent 2 weeks researching to share a little more about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. I didn't have as much time as I liked. I referred, there's several books I looked to. The Songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas, it was published by the BBT many years ago. There's a book called Hindu Encounter with Modernity by Sukhavak Prabhu, and then a beautiful book by Ferdinando Sardella. Those of you that like to read more academic things, Modern Hindu Personalism, published by Oxford Press. He's a member of the Oxford Center for Hindu Studies and based in Sweden, a personal friend, and he's written a beautiful book about the life primarily of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but there's also some wonderful biographical and historical information there in his book about Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So when we visit an ISKCON temple, we are already having the darshan of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur because he's there on all of the altars in all of our temples. And if you go to Mayapur or maybe even some of our little gift shops in other parts of the world, sometimes you see, you can get the pictures of the acharyas, and you know, Prabhupada is there and his Guru Maharaj is there, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur is also there. He's a very, very important personality in our line. And I mentioned I'm going to try to cover some things if there's time at the end. Hopefully invite some of the other senior people. I know Haryashra Prabhu is here. And I can't see all the names. Hopefully some of the other senior members may want to add something at a later time. But he's a very great and important acharya in our line. He's the father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. You know, the physical father, you know, the genetic father of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And he's the guru of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, who is the guru of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, who is the guru of Srila Prabhupada. So he's both in our lineage in terms of being a family lineage as well as in the guru to civic succession. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born in September 2nd, a little bit of a biographical overview first. He was born in September 2nd, 1838, which is actually a period of great upheaval in India. This very significant historical period. And I think you could look some comparisons to our own Srila Prabhupada, who came to he was born in a period of transition, but then of course came to America in a period of great social upheaval. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was also born in a very interesting time and lived through a period of great upheaval and changes that were going on in India. The British actually had taken charge of Bengal and much of Eastern India after the Battle of Plassey, I think is how you pronounce it, in 1765. And at that time, that's when they really started a major interplay of Bengali and Indian culture with British culture. Previous to that time, the British were just there through they didn't have any political authority. So it was somewhat quite limited in their interaction. And initially, when the British were there through the British East India Company, there was a period called the period of British Orientalism. There was a lot of appreciation for the local culture, for the local religions. There was a lot of sense of not wanting to interfere with the faith of the local people. But that changed. The British East India Company did not allow any missionaries in until 1813. And when that happened, very soon after, as sometimes happened with people of missionary spirit, pressure came on them. And with the arrival of the missionaries, the mood started to change. And historians say that by the time of 1820, 1830, the mood had changed from British Orientalism, which meant appreciation for the tradition, as well as understanding how kind of the global culture can interact with the traditional culture that was their spiritual culture, became really a period of British imperialism. There's a lot more of a kind of a dominance in the culture. And this was particularly significant because it caused a lot of Bengalis to reassess their own culture, their own tradition. And this new class of what became known as the Bhadra Loka, historically very significant for us, class of educated Bengalis who were trained in English and were trained a lot of times in English methods of education, which assisted the British Raj, the British government, in managing and ruling over India. So they became kind of like a middle ground between the local people and the British rulers at that time, and which led to a lot of reassessment by this educated class of people, looking back at the value of our culture, their culture, and how does it impact with modernity, and all kinds of different things came out of that particular period. So that's kind of a little bit overview of what was going on when Bhaktivinoda Thakur was born and during the years of his life. Again, he was born September 2nd, 1838. His name was Kedarnath Datta, and he was born at his maternal grandmother's home in a village called Ola, about 100 kilometers outside of Calcutta. I think it's north of Calcutta. And he faced much tribulation as a youth and as a child. In his early years, he had 3 brothers that died. I think first one and then later 2 others. 3 brothers of his died of cholera. And at the age of 11, his father died. So just by that age already, so much trauma that he had faced. And the family was burdened with debt, and so many complexities were there because of the death of the father. In 1852, at the age of 14, he went to live with his mother's brother, his maternal uncle in Calcutta. So he was living in a rural area, and that's when he first went to Calcutta. He lived with a rather prominent man, Kashi Prasad Ghosh, who was an editor of a newspaper, and it was a highly intellectual academic environment in the home of this uncle. And at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Kedarnath, began writing. He began writing articles for newspapers and began writing poetry. And he studied at an institute called the Hindu Charitable Institution, which was run with the idea of trying to teach traditional values. There was a lot of schools then that were teaching more, again, as I mentioned, the British form of studies, but this was more traditional. At 18, he again entered another Hindu-focused school called the Hindu School. He demonstrated himself to be an excellent student. He studied philosophy, he wrote more poetry, and actually published some volumes of poetry. And also, those that have some interest in history, he studied for some time under the famous Scottish missionary Alexander Duff. If you read any history of this period of time, Alexander Duff was quite a famous person who appreciated his poetry and kind of took him under his wing for some period of time. And also during these early years, he met many of the leaders of the future kind of Bhadra Loka movement. He was friends with the father of Rabindranath Thakur and many, many others, and also did some biblical studies at that time, and described himself in his own biography as of someone who had great appreciation for Lord Jesus Christ. In 1857, again, trauma and crisis hit. A cholera came to his home. He was in Calcutta. A cholera epidemic, which is interesting. We're here in this COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic. There was an epidemic of cholera that swept through the area of his village, and the entire village was wiped out. In fact, one of the biographers talks about how when he went there to do research, the history says that for 40 years after this period, nobody lived in that village because so many people had died, it was practically wiped out. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Kedarnath Datta, at that time, he went there just as this cholera epidemic was hitting. His sister died, so he's lost 3 brothers. His father, I think his father died from other causes, but his sister also died from cholera. He was able to get his mother, who was still alive, although terribly ill, and his grandmother, and move them out of Calcutta. And at this time, if you read the biographies, this is when he really began to express his religious sentiment and his philosophical mood. As we read also with Srila Prabhupada, how different circumstances and even Mahaprabhu, different circumstances led him to manifest more his devotional mood, his devotional lila. At 19, at an early age, he became a tutor, later became a teacher at the same Hindu charitable institution he studied at. He later left Calcutta in 1858, went back to a more rural environment. It's described he actually relocated 25 times, even professionally, and maybe even more than that if you count the times when he was younger. Later became a school principal, very much involved in education. Again, trauma hit. And these things are important for us because we all face various types of crisis and traumas in our own lives. And it's interesting to see that even our great acharyas, sometimes in their lives, they face a lot of difficulty. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was married. He had a 10-month-old child, and his first wife passed away. So he lost his father when he was young. He lost his 3 brothers. He lost his sister, and then he lost his wife. He remarried a woman who we know, name is more well known to us than his first wife. Her name was Bhagati Devi. And they later had many children. We'll talk about that later. And he had a variety of different jobs. He was a tax collector at some point in time. And it says he gave that up because he rejected the ruthlessness of the way that organization was run. Some of us may also relate to that. We may have a job with a company from time to time, or different companies that we don't like their ruthless nature. We look for something more sattvic. And he also gave up at least this one job because it wasn't appropriate for that. In 1866, he really began his life's work in terms of professionally entered into government service, which a lot of benefits of that, steadiness in terms of times of turmoil. And he was in the government service in 1866 to 1894. So that's 28 years, almost 30 years. And he rose in what was called the sub-executive service. The highest echelons of government in India were only open to the British during the period of India being a British colony. But he rose to the highest levels within that civil service that was open to people of native Indian birth. By 1860, he became a deputy magistrate. That's about the time he started being actually exposed to the richness of Chaitanya Vaishnavism. It said before that period, he'd never read Chaitanya Charitamrita. He'd heard of it, but he didn't have access to it. He wanted, but then he was able to come in contact with the Chaitanya Charitamrita. From 1869, we've heard this, most of us, to 1874, was the magistrate in charge of the Puri temple. He didn't oversee the spiritual functions, what the pundits were doing and all that things. But he was supposed to, this is a quote, oversee the law and order and act as a representative of the British government. And he was also in charge of those of us that take care of guest services. You'll appreciate that part of his duty in Orissa at the Puri temple included looking after the lodging and the food for the pilgrims at Puri. I'm thinking of New Vrindavan when I go there and get this big guest lodge and so many things. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the acharya of that as well. He also took care of that. And we can read so many histories, interesting histories are there. Many of us, we know the little story about when he was a magistrate, Vivek Shena. Let's see, I marked this in the songbook so I can read a little of this. Let's see. Thakur Bhaktivinoda was especially entrusted to quell the rise against the government of one Bhishiki Shena, who declared himself to be an incarnation of Mahavishnu. During the course of his investigation, Thakur Bhaktivinoda found him to be a hoax and a culprit and charged him with transgressing government injunctions. I'm reading from the BBT Songs of the Vaishnava Acharyas. After his trial, the fellow was sentenced to imprisonment for 1.5 years, but he died shortly in jail. The man was possessed of unnatural powers, but as they were the outcome of non-spiritual practices, he had to submit to the Thakur when the latter wanted him to do so. Bhishiki Sena was held in dread by common people, and everyone warned Bhaktivinoda Thakur not to admonish him, even for the sake of justice. So they thought he had so many powers. It's described as a mystic yogi. He had a lot of power in his hair. Later, during the trial, Bhaktivinoda Thakur and his entire family became very, very ill. And at one point, he had to be carried into the courtroom because he was so sick. But he held strong, and they found this man in violating of the laws, and he was put in jail and later died. With the fall of Bhishiki Shena, there arose an impostor Balaram at another village. Prabhu says these things happen in India and other parts of the world as well. But there were other so-called incarnations of God, but their plans were similarly frustrated. So among his duties as the magistrate, he had to deal with all these imposters in that era. So reading a little more here. So one of the things that's described a lot, which is very interesting about Bhaktivinoda Thakur in this particular time period, was that he was using, because there was this challenge in the culture with the external influences of the British, a lot of the people weren't so highly educated in their own tradition. And when there was these British kind of attacks against the culture, this Bhadra local community rose up to, how do we respond to this? And some people within this movement, they rejected a lot of the tradition and some of the different kind of neo-Hindu movements grew up at that time, modern Hindu movements grew up at that time, which rejected a lot of the tradition. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he used rational arguments to make the tradition more understandable. He was a man of his times, again, highly educated, highly placed government service, highly respected person. And the Chaitanya Vaishnava tradition in particular, and much of the broader Hindu culture was really under attack. So a lot of these Bhadraloka, these Bengali intellectuals, they were trying to find the balance between modernity and the tradition. And many of them, they rejected aspects of the tradition. Bhaktivinoda Thakur used his position and his erudition, his ability to write and present things so beautifully, to bridge that gap of how can we honor the tradition at the same time engage with modernity. And one example, he taught a lot about this concept of Saragrahi, which he explained was a person who is spiritually advanced, but who can also respect the traditions and the beliefs of other people. We see even today in America, and there's a lot of tension between one religious thought and another religious thought. And sometimes people think, well, if mine is right, yours must be wrong. And if you say yours is right, that must mean you're saying that mine is wrong. But he wrote a lot about this idea of a spiritually advanced person. Of course, we know lines up perfectly with our Vaishnava philosophy, understands that Krishna is the heart of every living entity and sees the value in different religious traditions. We know in the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, whenever and wherever there's a decline in religious practice, I descend myself. And in the purport, Prabhupada writes, he says, it's not a fact that Krishna only comes on Indian soil. He can appear anywhere and everywhere he wants, and he teaches according to the time, place, and circumstance. He says, but the principles of religion are the same. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur was very much emphasizing this mood of living in a culture that was dominated by other culture, other country. He learned to help bridge that gap. So a few other things. That's pretty much the kind of a quick overlook at his biography. Just to highlight some of the points about his contributions, particularly from our Vaishnava perspective. As I mentioned, at that time, Vaishnavism was largely denigrated. There was a lot of people claiming to be followers of Lord Chaitanya, but they weren't necessarily following principles. They were kind of imitating Krishna Lila and all kinds of things like that, which are certainly considered bogus, according to our acharyas. And in this way, people lost their appreciation. Described that even Krishna himself, who was such an important personality, even within the broader Hindu culture, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we worship Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. But even amongst those that don't accept him as such, he's highly revered. And people who did not understand the deeper philosophical explanation of Krishna and his Leela, many times, especially in the British and the missionaries, they would attack Krishna as an emblem of all that's wrong with this bad religious tradition, Hinduism, and within that category, Vaishnavism. So there's a tremendous need to reestablish a more sophisticated explanation. The kind of simple village people didn't know how to explain these things to the philosophers, the erudite philosophers they're criticizing. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur played a very, very critical role in that, to not reject the tradition, but to understand it more deeply. I remember myself when I was in Denver as the president there, I remember one lady, I don't remember her name, but a very beautiful person, very devout member of our congregation. And I remember her explaining that sometimes some of the people from different religious traditions would come and knock on her door in Denver and start, and she's a nice, gentle lady. She'd invite them into her home and they'd start talking to her about her religion. And they'd ask her different questions. And I remember her telling me, I didn't really know how to answer them. They challenge her in so many ways. And she just knew, well, I believe in Krishna and I believe in Bhagavad Gita and I like to chant and I like to do puja and I like to go to the temple. But they challenge, well, why? What about this? What about that? And what about this supposed inconsistency? And what about that? And she didn't know how to answer. So in one way, that's a testimony to her kind of pure and simple faith, simple in a kind way, not in appreciating the purity of her faith. But at the same time, if people don't have more deeply rooted faith, more deeper understanding of the scripture, and as Prabhupada says, to use logic and argument in establishing the Vaishnava or the theistic understanding of life and understanding the nature of the soul and our relationship with Krishna. If we don't understand that depth, we're kind of like, boats on the water without a sail and without a rudder. Wherever the tides come, we get pushed around. And in this era of a lot of different religious traditions interacting with each other, many of whom, feel it's important for them to kind of teach you what they know and sometimes want to convert you. We all have to go deeper in our tradition. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a real acharya, and especially, certainly in that era, and for the modern era of establishing the need to be rooted very, very deeply in our tradition. So he helped to reestablish the respectability of Vaishnavism. And it's interesting, part of the way he did that was through his scholarly writings. And another way he did that was because he was such a respected member of society. And I know today with so many congregational members who live outside and have jobs in different professions, sometimes we wonder, well, how do I, be a devotee and be a vice president of a marketing firm? Or how do I be a devotee and work in sales or work in IT for some, government organization or something like that? And here's one way we can do it. We should be successful in our professions, and we should be thus especially respected in our professions. And people naturally, when they respect you, they want to hear from you. They want to understand about you. They want to know why you do what you do. And sometimes it goes to like, what do you believe, what you believe? And why do you believe what you believe? What motivates you? I told a story yesterday, gave a class to India, actually was this morning, Sunday morning, late Saturday night. And I told the story of a friend of mine here in Denver, in Washington, D.C., he's got a job as a bus driver. And he wears tilak to work on the bus every single day. And people see him. And he told me that one day his boss called him into the office and said, because they have cameras on the buses these days, I guess, to make sure the drivers are polite and make sure everything's safe on the bus. And his boss called him in and said, I want to talk to you. And he said to him, do I need a union man here? Like, am I in trouble? Do I have to have somebody here to protect my interests? He said, no, I just want to talk to you. He said, okay. He said, I got to know. I watch you on the camera. You're always smiling and you're singing. What is it you're singing? And why is it you're always smiling? This was the boss of a Hare Krishna, of a Vaishnava bus driver, who just by watching him on TV wanted to know, what is it about you that makes you so happy and so special? So in this way, in a more humble way than Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but in a similar mood, by who he is, he's increasing the respectability of ISKCON and the Vaishnava tradition and the Hare Krishna mantra. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a century or so ago, was having the same impact on the whole society by bringing up the respect of the Vaishnava tradition. So that's a very, very, very important contribution that he made. In addition to that, at that time, there was disagreement over where was the location of Lord Chaitanya's birth. Some people said it's in Navadvip, some people said here, some people said there. So at one point, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, after a lot of effort, he was transferred so that to Krishna Nagar. So he was there near Navadvip, near Mayapur. And he's credited with finding the actual location. He went back and looked at maps and interviewed people and did a real kind of a special scholarly search. And then talked with some of the people from previous times, looked on maps and all those kind of things. So I say older people that knew about previous times. So that's another major contribution. He wrote 100 books. We know Srila Prabhupada wrote so many books. This is not a new thing in our tradition. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote over 100 books. And not only did he write those books, he sent copies of them to different parts of the world. We know, I think when when devotees first went to McGill University, there was a copy of in Canada, there was a copy of one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's books there in the library, as example. He also reached out and has some correspondence with the American Transcendentalists in that era. Of course, when he was at Puri, I mentioned he was stationed at Puri from 1869 to 1874, I think 5-6 years. That's when his son, Srila Prabhupada's Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, was born. Beautiful story about because he was the magistrate as the Rath cart is coming down the street in Puri. Stopped, as Jagannath sometimes chooses to do. The cart stopped right in front of their home, and I stayed there for some time. Haryashra, maybe you can tell us later. I think it was 3 days, some extended period of time. Either way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's wife took the opportunity to bring the child. Later, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they brought the child up on the cart, and a garland fell from Lord Jagannath around the baby. And when Bhaktivinoda Thakur heard that, then he knew his prayers have been answered, because he'd been praying to the Lord, please. There's so many obstacles in trying to help spread and teach Krishna consciousness, teach Gaudiya Vaishnavism, teach about Lord Chaitanya. Send me some help. And then he knew his own son was there to assist with that. In addition to that, his writing his books is Finding Mayapur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. He wrote a lot of songs. If you look through the songbooks, if you don't notice, take a second and look. So many beautiful songs that we sing on a regular basis were written by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So he continues very much to be part of our ISKCON culture. Manasa Deha Geha, the Radha Madhava that I sung earlier, the Gopinath songs are well known and beloved by all of us. And then, of course, the most famous Vaishnava song of all is accredited to him, Sarira Avijajal Tatandiya Taika Jive Fide Visaya Sagare. We all love that one. So before you honor Prasadam, you should be thinking, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he gave us this prayer, taught us the mood of how to honor Prasadam. Also, so many things he did. He established the whole vision of Namhata and this preaching in people's homes, and set up a very kind of elaborate system that continues on into today. Thousands of people benefited from that. He's also really contributed in many, many ways to a whole renaissance of Vaishnava culture. Arts, music, song. As I mentioned, he wrote so many books and wrote so many songs like that. And on top of all of that, for those of us that are grahastas that have kids, you may think it's tough having 2 kids. You may think, oh my gosh, I've got 3 kids. Some of you may think, gosh, 4 kids are pretty hard. He had 14. And somehow or other, he was, as I mentioned, a magistrate. He took care of this big family. He wrote so many books. He was a great pioneer and acharya of our Krishna consciousness movement. And he took care and raised 14 children, not the least of which certainly that he raised the great Acharya Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So those are just some brief kind of overviews of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his contributions. I wanted to share just a couple other things, and then we'll open for some discussion and comment. Bhaktivinoda Thakur really, in many, many ways, gives us guidance how to interact with the society at large. As I mentioned, he was a man of his times, and it was a time when even the whole Vaishnava culture was somewhat, at least under criticism, you could say under attack, and many people were abandoning their faith under the pressure of modernity and kind of, the deities, kind of an archaic thing. We don't want to worship deities anymore. Or some people said, this idea of Krishna being God or God's a person, we want to get rid of that. We're just going to keep a couple of the elements, and otherwise we're going to become very modern. And again, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he did the opposite. He said, let's use modern argument. We learn about what these other traditions are, what these other philosophies are. We value the good things that are there, and understanding that language, we learn how to communicate with people from other cultures, other countries, other traditions, to explain and express in a way they can understand the Gaudiya Vaishnava conclusions. And there's something beautiful he wrote, this from one of his books, I think Krishna Samhita, reference about what about when we interact with other religious traditions, which is something that I do quite a bit of, and perhaps many of you listening this evening also do. Here's what he said we should do, what our mentality should be when we interact with people of another faith, or maybe even find ourselves in a mosque or a church or a different temple or something like that, a gurdwara. Because oftentimes we may feel threatened, we may feel very uncomfortable, we may feel a little fearful, we may look around and think, oh, they don't have deities, we're better than them, or they don't do this, we're better than them, or we have a lot of different reactions that maybe aren't so spiritually progressive, spiritually advanced. Here's what he said. When we have the occasion to be present at the place of worship of other religionists at the time of their worship, we should stay there in a respectful mood, contemplating thus: here is being worshipped my adorable highest entity, God in a form different than that of mine. So here's being worshipped my adorable highest entity, God in a different form than that of mine. Due to my practice of a different kind, I cannot thoroughly comprehend this system of theirs. But seeing it, I'm feeling a greater attachment for my own system. By seeing this other system of worship, I'm feeling a greater attachment for my own system. I'm not threatened. I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm not discriminating or putting them down. I'm feeling greater affection and attachment for my own system. He goes on, I bow down with prostration before his emblem, as I see here, and I offer my prayer to my Lord, who has adopted this different emblem, that he may increase my love towards him. So he's seen, isn't it amazing how Krishna is worshipped in so many different ways? Krishna is so wonderful. He's in the church. He's in the mosque. He's in the gurdwara. He's in the different temples. And he's being understood by different people in different ways. But he's the supreme personality of Godhead. And I'm inspired to see these, beautiful hymns. They're like bhajans. They're Christian bhajans, and they're glorification. And when I see people bowing down a different way, that's not my system. I don't understand their system, but seeing them bow down before God increases my faith in God. Such a beautiful vision that he described for us. And I read one other thing, because sometimes as devotees, it's a little difficult because we understand, Krishna says, Sarva Dharma Prityaga, renounce the world. Sometimes we hear, Prabhupada writes about if we have any attachment for this bodily conception of life, that's ignorance. We have to get rid of that illusion. Certainly those things are all true. At the same time, it doesn't mean we lose sight of the need to be compassionate for people in this world. People may be ignorant. People may be confused about their spiritual identity. I've been listening to a series of lectures, morning Prabhupada's lectures on Bhagavad Gita, and again and again and again and again and again, you're not the body, you're not the body. And but that doesn't mean we don't understand there's needs of the body that have to be addressed. And sometimes devotees, we can even become a little hard-hearted. I can remember as a young brahmachari in India, and in those days there was quite a bit of poverty in India, and they gave us a few rupees. And I can remember seeing that sometimes the young brahmacharis would walk across the street with whatever we had, 20 rupees for a month. We didn't get much. And buy a mango lassi or something like that. And there'd be poor people there begging, sometimes in front of the temples. And the kind of ethic or the mood was, well, we're devotees and don't give people money because, who knows what's going to happen with that money. We're devotees. I was feeling pretty uncomfortable because I wasn't sure I was a devotee. And I was pretty sure these people actually were probably some need there. And I didn't know what should be done. So here's what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says. Those who think that devotion to God and kindness to the jivas are mutually different from each other. Those who think that devotion to God and kindness to the jivas are mutually different from each other and perform accordingly in their life, such persons will not be able to follow the devotional culture. Their performance is only a semblance of devotion. Therefore, all the types of beneficence to others, like kindness, friendliness, forgiveness, charity, respect, and so forth, are all included in bhakti. Charity of medicines, clothes, food, water, etc., shelter during adversities, teaching of academic and spiritual education, etc., are the activities included in the devotional culture. This is Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Sri Tattva Sutram 35. So, especially those of us that are grahastas, we should understand that while we live in the world, we have multi-levels of duties. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a great acharya and he still went to work every day. He was a great acharya and he still respected the British authorities because he was working under the British government, and but he was teaching the essence of Vaishnava culture at every moment. And we also should not fail to understand that being mostly concerned with the soul doesn't mean I'm hard-hearted towards the needs of the body and the needs of the mind. The fact that I'm chanting Hare Krishna doesn't mean I can't take a moment to offer some words of respect when I see people on the street. That's also proper, to be respectful and to be kind. As he said, kindness, charity, forgiveness, respect. These are also parts of the culture of bhakti. So lots and lots and lots to say and to think about with Bhaktivinoda Thakur, but I'd like to stop there. I don't know if Vishnu Gada's on with us this evening. I can see Haryashva. I can only see 5 names and photos here, so I'm not sure of all the glorious Vaishnavas that are there. But maybe we can open up for some discussion on this glorious day of the appearance of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So I'm not sure who's our host. I don't know if Drone is there or someone else is hosting us. If maybe we can, there's nothing in the chat box. So whoever's the...
Yes, I'm here. Anuttama Prabhu.
Drone, thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Any comments anyone like to make or share some other stories about Bhaktivinoda Thakur?
Sure. Well, first, I just wanted to thank you, Anuttama Prabhu. That was a wonderful overview of the biography and his life, and you really shared just how well-rounded and fluid he was with modern times, but also his connection to the ancient tradition. I'll let others share before I say something, because I know Haryashva was going to say something, but I just want to thank you for that really comprehensive overview. Is really relishable to hear.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a lot to say. And then again, I'll put a plug in for this book, Modern Hindu Personalism, primarily about Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but also Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Haryashva Prabhu, please.
Yes, Drona beat me to the punch, Prabhu. I had such a wonderful time listening to you, and the glorification and the information about Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. There's many aspects of his life. He's a very important person to me. But I just want to say one of the things I so much appreciate about him, that as we grow closer to look at Srila Prabhupada and then start following Srila Prabhupada to his earlier life with Bhaktisiddhanta and see Srila Prabhupada as a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, then we see Bhaktisiddhanta really, although the son of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you see him as like a disciple of his father, and the vision that his father had. I mean, such a visionary. You spoke that he was such a brilliant person and scholarly, but the vision is you and I being here today are a manifestation of the vision of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and Srila Prabhupada was the carrier. You know, he's a manifestation of that vision. And so that's one aspect that I just adore about him. And then you went to his songs. You know, as a bhakta, I would listen the prayers. Those songs are prayers and glorification. And as a bhakta, I was so spaced out that I'd cry. And now, as a hardened older man, I just can't believe. You know, like Sudha Bhakata is one of my favorites. And, you know, there's just so many of them. It's such a carrier. When you see that he excavated Vaishnavism, but in an easily understandable way, that a person with no background could so appreciate the realizations of the process of Vaishnavism as given by him. So it was really, really exciting to hear you glorify him like that. And the last thing I loved is the diversity and the different traditions dealing with people. I think either it's our nature to care, or as the process of Krishna consciousness begins to have its effect on us, as the change of heart begins to manifest, then we can't help but be compassionate. It's the effect of bhakti. You can't get away from it. So when we see the other traditions, we early on we're fearful of our own position, but as we go on, we begin to have that loving appreciation of our Father's devotees in a way that we don't yet understand. That's my 2 cents. But thank you so very much.
You know, and your comments remind me one thing I didn't mention. It's a well-known story, but we have to mention about how he had this vision from his home looking across the Jalangi of the beautiful temple manifesting in Mayapur. So the TOVP that we're all watching come up was his vision that Srila Prabhupada, our Prabhupada, was very intent on fulfilling. And that's why there's such a push to build this beautiful temple, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur had this vision. And then, of course, it was predicted earlier that people from all around the world would come and take up this mission of Lord Chaitanya. So that's also another very, very important contribution that he made. And as you said, vision, because this was, again, you know, more than 100 years ago, and we're today fulfilling that vision and very inspired to do so. So thank you for that, Haryashra Prabhu.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments or things to add? I can't see anybody, so let's see. A lot of names, not a lot of faces. Everybody's got their names up or pictures of their deities, but I can't see anybody's raising.
That's hard for me, Anuttama Prabhu. When I can't see faces, you know, it's really difficult for me. They need to unmask themselves and come forward.
Or at least show their face with their mask on. They should unmask their masked faces, right? Yeah. And those of you that have been to Mayapur too, Bhaktivinoda Thakur's samadhi is right there, just on the road, right at the entrance to the yoga pit.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was going to read a little section. Joni, you're unmuted. Did you want to add something?
The first time that I read that passage that you had read about how we should feel when we're around other religious traditions, or we go to a church or another place of worship, it sent chills, you know, down me. It was so profound, and to think that it came from Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur was, you know, somebody that just, you know, lived centuries, a century ago, and the relevancy of somebody that's maybe not living in modern times, to, you know, that level of understanding. Because now we have, you know, internet, we have, you know, ways of connecting with other types of traditions and knowing about them. But he was so open-minded, but yet so, you know, adherence to the, you know, Chaitanya's philosophy. It amazes me how he could see the essence, but at the same time, he was willing to stand up for that level of philosophy and doctrine, which was completely, against, or that was, you know, made up or manipulated, you know, for convenience, or for, you know, just based on mental speculation. So he was very strict and very, you know, he fought against the things that, you know, were not right, but he could see, even though it wasn't within his religious tradition, the things that were consistent. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from that, as you had stated. And as devotees now, when we interact with so many people of, the various faiths of the world, the various beliefs that people have, to be able to see the true essence of Krishna consciousness and everything. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given us the model to do that.
Yeah, I'll say, like myself, with my communications work, I go to different church events a few times a year, maybe not every year, but usually a few times. And his vision, I find directly, I remember that, and it reaffirms what I already feel. You walk in and you may not understand everything there, but certainly there's a sense that this is a place that people come to pray, maybe once a week, maybe for the last 100 years. You go to some places in Europe for the last 500 years, and there's no doubt something very special there. I was in the Middle East not too long ago. I went to like the National Mosque or something. It's just an astounding building. Really brings out a sense of awe and reverence. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives us the space by which we can appreciate that and feel God's presence, feel Krishna's presence, and at the same time feel very much connected, or even more deeply connected, to our own tradition. It's kind of like, if you really love someone, and then the more you find out about them, like, I love my mom, but geez, I didn't know she was a big person on the, the Parent-Teacher Association. Or I love my mother, but geez, I didn't know she was a songwriter when she was younger. I love my mother, I didn't know she was a great gardener. As you learn more about someone who's so lovable, your love goes deeper. So the same way with Krishna, our goal is to awaken our love for Krishna. So it's wonderful to see how he's so deeply revealed in our tradition. But as we advance in our spiritual connection with him, to be able to see, oh, he's there too. Wow. Oh, look, he's over there. Oh, look how he came to those people in a different book, in a different song, in a different mantra, and how he's trying to uplift these people, etc. And then it's just, he opens the doors for us to see that. And I think, there is a tendency, we see it in the world today, there's a lot of tendency to appreciate other traditions, and there's a lot of energy to just vilify other traditions because of historical conflicts, or just, a lot of different reasons. And I think within our own society, sometimes we may feel those same pressures. He gives us the authority to have a different view, which is, as both of you have mentioned, to see Krishna's presence everywhere, and to aspire for that, and to look for areas of commonality without minimizing the difference, that we can also learn from our differences. But he gives us, he gives us that authority. Just like I was reading the Leelamrita just yesterday, the first time Prabhupada took devotees out to chant in the history of our movement. Prabhupada took devotees in New York to Washington Square Park. And he told them, don't worry, follow me. And they were all kind of very shy and very uncomfortable. And they sat down on the grass. And within a few minutes, the police came up and said, can't you read the sign? Don't sit here. So Prabhupada got up, moved a few feet over, sat down on the hot pavement, and began singing and chanting. And devotees were a little weak, but after a while, they started feeling comfortable with it. So he gave them, the shelter, gave them the enthusiasm, gave them, as Hariyasu said, the vision. You can do that. You can do this, and this is good. And then they realize this is great. And most of us on the call, we've had the experience of going to Harinam, and it's a little uncomfortable. Not everybody knows what you're doing, but wow, this is great, because Prabhupada gave us that opportunity. He gave us that vision. So in the same way, Bhaktivinoda Thakur gave us this all-inclusive vision. And of course, we know it's coming from Krishna, it's coming from Lord Chaitanya, but he really made it real in the modern context for us. So it's 5:31. Do you have a strict cutoff time, or should we see if there's anybody else out there with a question or comment, or what?
We can see if we have one announcement that may take a few minutes.
Sure, go ahead.
We can definitely take a few. We can see if there's any more questions. People can either unmute their microphones or raise the hand. Either way, is fine. We have some people on YouTube that are watching. Unfortunately for them, they can't, the interaction is only one way. They can't ask any questions.
One thing we could do, Hari Ashram mentioned about Bhaktivinoda Thakur songs. We could sing one other little bhajan. I can just sing. I don't have good instruments.
That'd be great.
This is Arunadaya Kirtan,
Oh,
morning
Sweet.
kirtan, right? Hari
yes,
Ashram mentioned Bhakti. This is what we used to sing.
yes, me too.
It's long. I'll maybe just sing the first maybe the first part of the first part.
And then you have to read it too.
Yeah, then I'll read the translation,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to read the first part. Udila, right? Udila Aruna Pura Baba Dvijamani Gora Managage Pakata Samuha Loila Sate Gela Nagara Viraje Tatai Tate Bajola Kol Gana Gana Tahe Jajeroro Preme Dala Dala Sonara Anga Charana Nupura Bahaje Mukunda Madhava Yadava Hari Bolena Bolore Vadana Bori Miche Nada Veshe Gelora Rati Dvivasa Sharira Saye Emana Durlaba Manava Deha Payaki Koro Baba Nakeha Ebe Nabaji Leg Yoshoda Sutta Taramapodi Laje. That's the first 4 verses of the first part. So I'll read the translation. Is that okay, Hari Ashram?
Sure, I can't wait.
When the rising sun appeared in the east, the jewel of the twice-born Lord Gaurasundar awakened, and taking his devotees with him, he went all over the countryside, towns and villages, and played the mridanga, and the cymbals chimed in time. Lord Gauranga's shimmering golden features danced, and his foot bells jingled. All the devotees chanted the names, Mukunda, Madhava, Yadava, and Hari, their mouths being filled with the vibrations. They would announce to the still sleeping people, you spend your nights uselessly sleeping and your days decorating your bodies. You have achieved such a rare human body, but still you do not care for this gift. You remain not serving the darling of Yashoda and slowly fall through your last moments to death. With every rising and setting of the sun, a day passes and is lost. Then why do you remain idle and not serve the Lord of the heart? This temporary life is full of miseries. Take shelter of the holy name as your only business. To penetrate the darkness of ignorance and bless everyone's heart, the holy name has arisen just like the shining sun. Drink the pure nectar of the holy name. There is nothing but the name to be had in the 14 worlds. It has filled the soul of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai.
Jay.
And then any of us that have ever lived in ashram, you've been awakened by this one before. Just the first line. Jeev jago, Gora chanda bole, Kotanita yao maya, Pisa chira bole. Those that don't know the song, but sometimes you have devotees say to you, Jeev jago. Get up, let's go. You know that's where that's from. Even in our ordinary day-to-day culture, Bhaktivinoda Thakur always plays an important part. So, Bhaktivinoda Thakur Maharaj ki jai. All glories to
Jay.
his special appearance.
Hare
Jai.
Krishna. Thank you so very much. So beautiful.
A lot of nectar that you gave us, Anuttama Prabhu, and this great Acharya. I hope that the devotees out there, for whatever is left of today, we can continue to remember and pray for the mercy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to help us continue the mission that he started, the vision that he started to help fulfill. It's in our hands now to help keep his legacy moving forward. And I thank you, Anuttama Prabhu, for being one of these leaders in the modern day legacy of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We're very fortunate to have you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Trying to be the servant to the servant to the servant. There's nothing greater. When we can do that, that's the highest achievement.
So a couple of announcements I want to make. We have here in Philadelphia, we do a Sunday feast, but it's in a modification of the traditional Sunday feast that we're used to in ISKCON pre-COVID. We're always cooking offerings for the deities every Sunday, and since June, when we opened up again on a limited basis, we've been distributing prasadam to the devotees who RSVP for it. And it's quite amazing to see the devotees coming and the enthusiasm they come with. It's definitely something there. They feel inspired to come at least once a week to get that Krishna prasadam. And every week we get about 100, we distribute about 100 plates of prasadam, to the community that come. We have darshan that's open from 5:45 to 7:15. And we have an artik that we allow devotees to sit in. It's kind of first come, first serve. We only allow 25 people to sit, and that's from 6:45 to 7:15. Our Sunday feast sponsor this week is Kaivalya and Bakukshi, Kaivalya Prabhu and Bakukshi Mataji. They are sponsoring it on behalf of their grandson's, Madhava's, first birthday. Haribo.
Haribo.
So a very happy occasion. This is the son of Chaitanya and Madhavi Gaurangi Mahajan. So let's please bless this special devotee with prayers and blessings for a happy and healthy Krishna conscious life. Let us chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So thank you again, Kaivalya Prabhu, for sponsoring tonight's feast. It will be distributed to the devotees.
Jonah,
Tomorrow,
if I may, I've got another commitment I'm actually a few minutes late for. So with your permission, I'll miss the second announcement, but if it's exciting as the first one, that'll be
so it's about Bhadra Purnima. The next one is Bhadra Purnima.
Very exciting.
And I don't know if you want to put a plug in for it before you leave.
This is a very, very, very auspicious day. It's described in the Shastra. Anyone that shares the Bhagavatam on this day is rewarded so many tremendous benefits, perhaps even goes back to Godhead, something special like that. I know this is something that temples around the world have picked up, especially at this time of COVID. It's a difficult time for us in many ways, kind of the traditional ways to go and distribute Prabhupada's books, but it's a wonderful way to share Bhagavatams. I know we have a friend, we actually had 2 sets. I had an office at the temple that's being unpacked now. So we had an extra set of Bhagavatams, and by Krishna's arrangement, we actually had planned to give this set of Bhagavatams away to this other devotee tomorrow. And then we realized, hey, this is the day. So whether you give a set of Bhagavatams or buy a set of Bhagavatams or sponsor a set of Bhagavatams, it's a very special opportunity. And Joan will give you more details on that. And I'll take everyone's permission to leave now, if I may. Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
Thank you so much, Anuttama Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Radha Bihari ki jai.
Jai.
Jagannath Baladev ki jai. Shisa
Jai.
ki jai.
Jai. So I'm going to hand things over to Denu Tarpata Prabhu. He's the head of our book distribution team, and he is going to give us some more details about this auspicious day of Bhadra Purnima that is coming up this Tuesday.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the opportunity. And I also offer my respectful obeisances to devotees on the call or on the video, especially Hariyash Prabhu and other esteemed Vaishnavas. And as Dronacharya Prabhu mentioned, and His Grace Anuttama Prabhu echoed about the importance of Bhadra Purnima. So this is very important in the Vaishnava culture. Today we are celebrating the appearance day of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he has written over 100 books that were meant primarily to preserve the Vedic culture. So giving Srimad Bhagavatam, taking the Bhagavatam set for your own family, or even sponsoring it, goes a long way in preserving the Vedic culture. This is a worldwide ISKCON movement this time, where all the temples in different parts of the world have come together to sign up on a goal, and each temple is doing its own little bit, so that not only the Srimad Bhagavatam sets are distributed, but then people who get them will also get a lot of mercy. So a unique opportunity for all of us, those who are on the call, if you would like to take one, gift one, or sponsor one, this is the time to do it. You can reach out to either myself or Drona Prabhu or other temple congregation members. And there is an event on Tuesday, 1st of September, which is the day of Bhadra Purnima, when there will be a lecture in the temple in the evening, and you can come. You're most welcome to come and accept your Srimad Bhagavatam set. This time, what is different is that the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust is also arranging a yagya at Ahobilam in India. Ahobilam is the appearance place of Lord Nrsimhadev, and Lord Nrsimhadev is known to protect his devotees, and especially in the time of COVID. So those devotees who are willing to participate, their names will be sent to BBT so that they could be chanted. So we still have time. The names have to be sent by midnight tonight. So if you are still interested, please come forward and make this the best use of this opportunity so that you can also participate in Bhadra Purnima. Thank you. Back to Dhanacharya Prabhu.
Thank you, Dan Interpreter Prabhu. And just to reiterate that on Tuesday evening at 6:30, we'll have a program in the temple. We'll have Kirtan. Vishnu Gada Prabhu will be giving a special class on the glories of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then there'll be the distribution of Srimad Bhagavatam to the devotees that sponsored. So please, if you can, come to the temple. And if you choose to stay home, we will have the program broadcasted over Zoom, the same Zoom channel. Okay, so with that, we will conclude for today. We'll see some of you tonight. Those of you who will not be coming, please tune in to our many classes that we have throughout the week. Every morning at 7:50 a.m. we study Srimad Bhagavatam. So please tune in. On Sunday mornings at 8 o'clock, and instead of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have Japa Reform, time when we learn about Japa and how to improve it, and we chant together our Japa. So the same Zoom channel, many ways to get involved and participate in devotee association during COVID. It can be difficult, we know. I hear from many times devotees are saying that they just don't get a chance to associate with each other, and we can't come to the temple and associate in large groups, and it's a lot different. But I just wanted to point out that there is a great opportunity every morning to come together at 7:50 and hear and associate with each other. So please take advantage of this if your time permits. With that, we pray to Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur to give us empowerment and blessings to continue to be Krishna conscious and spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai.